Now that we have Prism implemented inside of our application, and that we have also registered the 3 pages inside of our Vue folder for navigation, it is time to actually make the navigation. If you were to try to run the application right now, it would fail because currently there is no main page. You may remember how we have to set some main page for the app to actually navigate somewhere first. Except using Prism, we are probably going to want to implement this navigation in a way that Prism implements that navigation. And so what I will do is make the navigation with something called the navigation service. Now, the navigation service is actually something that we have available through the Prism application class. Here in the app, we have access to that property, the navigation service. With the navigation service, we can use the navigate async method to navigate to any class that may have already been registered. For example, the books page. And indeed, it is this simple how you would do that navigation. This would be the Prism version of establishing the main page of the app to a new books page. So let's go ahead and test this out, and now right after the application starts, we should see that we are indeed navigated to the books page. And just as you would expect, because we don't have a navigation page yet, you don't see any title bar. So as you can see, this is pretty much the exact same thing as it would without Prism. So how do we use a navigation page? Well, to use a navigation page, we have to register that navigation page as well. Of course, it has no VM associated to it, but we do have to register the navigation page. And to navigate using the navigation page, all we have to do is right before the name of the page, write navigation page. Just like this, now the navigation page is going to be used, and the books page is kind of like going to be its root, the root of the navigation page. Again, as we have seen it work before, if I run this now, I will see that now I do have this title bar, and I see the toolbar item that I defined, and everything just looks in the exact same way that we would expect. Of course, currently the add button does absolutely nothing. So during this lecture, now that we have this basic navigation complete, we're going to be navigating using a command that we need to define inside of the books VM. And that of course has to be bound over to this toolbar item that we have in the books page, and of course has to navigate over to the new book page. So the first thing that we will need is over here in the books VM. It turns out that we do not have access to that navigation service from here, but using dependency injection, which we already know a little bit more about, we can actually use an iNavigation service in here. To use iNavigation service, I need a using directive to Prism application, and this will have to be called navigation service. This is rather important. For some reason, it doesn't work if this is called differently, so make sure that this is called navigation service. And let me actually just make a global variable out of this. So let me just define a global variable in here. And so in the constructor, the global variable is going to be assigned to what we are receiving through dependency injection. And so if we were to create a method that we would use in just a second using a command that is going to be the new book action, which, because this is going to be an action for a command, has to receive an object but doesn't necessarily need to use it. But in here, we can actually use the navigation service as we have used it from the app class. We will be navigating using the navigation page over to the new book page, like this. And since I have already made this an async method, and we see that navigate async is an async method, well, I can await this call. So this is how we would do the navigation from the Vue model, basically just using an iNavigation service here with the help of some dependency injection. Now we actually need the command that is going to be bound over to the books page. So what I will do is define a new property of type iCommand. As we have done before, we need a using directive in here, and this is going to be the new book command. And similar to what we have done before, we have to initialize this from the constructor, except because we're now using Prism, the new book command is going to be initialized to something different. Before we would initialize this to be a new command, now we're going to be using the delegate command class. And to be able to use this, we're going to be adding a using directive to prism.commands. So the delegate commands constructor is still going to require that action, and the action that we're going to be creating, well, it's actually already here. It's going to be the new book action. And so we already have this delegate command. And actually for this, I do not need the object. I was thinking about the command of the delegate command. So basically we are doing the exact same thing, except using delegate command from Prism instead of the usual command. All there is left for us to do is bind this new book command over to the command of these toolbar items. So command is going to be binding to new book command. And this is actually everything that we have to do, because now remember the binding context that we used to set, well, it is now actually established through the register of these views along with their view models. And so I can actually go ahead and test this out already. If I were to run this on my simulator and click on add, we see the navigation happening already. And actually, I think I made a mistake over here. Instead of navigating from the view model, still using the navigation page is already there. So all I have to do is write new book page. So let me try this one more time, but you see how the command is already working. The binding is now going to be established directly when we register the views along with their corresponding view models. But now, as we can see in here, the navigation is happening as we would expect. Now, I just want to quickly mention in here that the navigation that we're using is more powerful than what we're seeing. This is just simple navigation, but to the navigation service, we can actually pass some parameters if there has to be some parameters passing between one page or another. And for example, with this command, the delegate command, it could also be checking for the can execute method, similar to what we know exists on a normal command. And in fact, it is going to be interesting because the parameter that we bind doesn't necessarily have to be calling the property changed, as we saw throughout the rest of the course. Any property that you bind as the parameter can actually be monitored for changes. But that is something that we're not going to be taking a look at right now. For now, the navigation is already working. As you can see, the navigation with Prism is rather straightforward. It may feel at the beginning that it happens through magic, but really everything that is happening is through some dependency injection here with the iNavigation service in the constructor of our view model class, and that the binding is going to be established when we register a particular view with its corresponding view model, instead of what we used to do with creating a resource inside of the content page and setting some binding context. So now that we have the navigation ready, in the next lecture I want to show you how is it that the Goodreads API is going to work. So we're not going to be focusing on using that because we already know how to make some REST requests. I will focus though in how we're going to be searching every single time the text inside of the search bar changes.